Good morning, church. Okay, that was oh man, just by minutes. Good afternoon, church. That was pretty weak. So here we are at our second housing forum for this year. If you remember from the first one, the housing team told us they would start giving us more frequent updates as we keep going along all the steps that will be needed. No decisions are being made. Emphasize that over and over. And sorry. You can read, there's the agenda. So we're now at the next step. And so we're having another informational forum. The first one, you remember, was catching everybody up on what the housing team had been doing for the last year or two. And so this is an important step because we have good news about a grant. Well, you can say we got it. Picking housing, what is it? Feasibility studies, and maybe most importantly, some talks about what other buildings are going on in the area that are on church space or worship space, and how that has evolved and how they've done it. The team has done a lot of excellent and hard work. They put in a lot of time, with anybody who's done a grant application, which I've not, I hear it's pretty horrendous. And then interviewing companies that do the feasibility studies, narrowing it down, consulting with our grant providers, which is Trinity Church Wall Street. They spend a lot of time talking with people, and they spend a lot of time talking with the congregations that they're going to share with us today about who has buildings on their property or are investigating or in the process. So I would like everyone to please give them a round of applause for. I don't think I worked this hard when I was working, and they're working here. At the end of the forum, we'll take questions in two formats. One is we'll pass around the mic. The other is if you'd rather not talk to a mic. There are little cards on each chair or table, and there are writing implements on the table. So you can either write your question or we'll pass around the mic. Please remember not to start talking until the mic is in your face. Otherwise, we're not going to hear it. And please continue to keep yourself informed when, with the updates, the housing team puts out a new update every month. We hand it out with the announcements. So please continue to keep yourself informed on what we're doing. It continues to be important work. And here's my little lecture. I know people are saying, well, we're not going to have that many units, so what's the point? Well, we hand out manna bags, and we're not going to be making much of a dent, if any, in food insecurities. But it made a difference to that person that you gave the manna bag to in that moment. So if we are able to put just a few housing units here, if that's what the congregation decides when we get to the end, well, then we will have made a difference to those few people. And so that's that many people less who are going to be not experiencing housing insecurities. So I know where I hope this goes, but this is a parish decision. Housing team is doing the work of bringing us the information so we can make informed decisions. So remember, no decisions today. That won't be for a while. This is information. So let us pray. On this Christ the King Sunday, may we remember to live out our faith by serving others with love and humility. Continue to guide us as we travel along this path of discernment, keeping our hearts and minds open to the possibilities of what housing might look like. Help us to be challenged, to think big about the abundant lives you have offered us, to explode the tiny boxes we tend to hide ourselves in, and help us not to live in fear, but live with your love for all. In Jesus' name, amen. Show begins. First up to bat is Jen. No? Who's doing? I don't know who's talking.
Go ahead, next slide. So just want to say a brief word about our housing team. We've got a new member on our housing team, Lamel Firestone Palermo. There she is. Everybody, yay. We're glad to have her with us. Next forum, you are doing all the talking. That's the rule. Sorry. Also, I will also want to mention that Ken Foote has offered to be a resource for us on grounds and information, because he's got a ton of history on that. So he's going to work with us on that. So thank you to both of them. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I'm going to give you a quick update on where we are in the housing process. As Robin mentioned, every month you get an update. If there's anything in there you're like, I don't know what that means, I'm concerned about that, just drop us an email. You can send it to me personally, you can send it to anyone on the team, or just send it to housing@stjudes.org, and we will all get it. So it's great. Next slide, please. So you've seen this before. This is our master chart. Discernment, feasibility, design, and build. We are in feasibility, and we've got, like, I guess you call them subcharts here. So feasibility is what's possible to do. So right now, if you go to the next slide, you can see the feasibility will hopefully answer this question. Is there affordable and clergy housing that can be built on the campus that meets our needs, but also is attractive for a developer to build? And that includes, this feasibility study includes both clergy and affordable housing. And there'll be more talk on that about how those two sort of fit together a little bit later in when JR talks about state laws. So let's go on to the next one. So here's where we are in the feasibility process. We've gone through goal setting. We have received a grant. After much work in applying for that grant, we've chosen a consultant who's HRNA, who has deep experience in these matters, including working currently with the Episcopal Church of Almaden and in a variety of other parishes. And then currently we are in the feasibility study, which is kind of the last step in feasibility. So if we go to the next slide, we can see this is where we are in the study process. I don't know why I have the name Jen on there. That's not me. I'm not doing that. So start with the pre-study work, which we have completed. It's all the work that goes into kind of like stuff for us, our grounds, what we have told as a parish, like what's important to us, things that we're concerned about, especially things like parking, just things that we care about that will inform the study, that are very important. And then now we're in the phase of data gathering. So we just started the feasibility study. The consultant just got on board this week, and we're having our first site visit this week. And so we're kind of kicking off. So there's going to be a period of time where they're looking into, if you go to the next slide, into things such as site assessment, what's going on with our site. As we know, we have a water infiltrator back there in the corner. We have to look at easements, just a variety of things. They're also going to look at a market scan, what's been built for affordable housing. Demand analysis, who's looking for housing right now that has an unmet need. And then, again, review of the parish input, which I've already talked about, which is a lot of the things that we want, things that the buildings aren't too tall, or the buildings fit with how things look, things like that, to see whether or not something could be built that is financially feasible, that works. So I just want a couple things that I just want everyone to keep in mind This feasibility study will include a plan for our tenants. Our tenants are very important to us. And in fact, I've been having conversations with several of them as I see them on campus during the week to let them know that they're very much important part of this process, and to make sure they give us wish lists, which several of them have given us, about, like, in the end, boy, we'd really like it if we could have this, maybe more flexible space, or maybe more space, or maybe they're perfectly happy with what they have. We need to get that information and make sure that they are a partner with us. If we decide to do anything, it's not going to be we're doing something and we're just putting it on you. You're going to be part of this. It will include orchard space and a plan to maintain the oasis character of our campus. These are two things which are important to a lot of us. It'll consider parishioner parking needs and fit with our current campus buildings. And last, we'll consider both the benefits and negatives. On our team, we have people who are like, yeah, let's build things. And then we have people on the team who are like, no, I don't know if we should build things. So that's one of the reasons why we have compiled the team that we have, is that it is a variety of parishioners who have been here a short amount of time and a long amount of time and have different thoughts on everything that's going on. And that's good, because we need all that different input. So I want to assure you, we have not made any kind of decision. And in fact, the decision's not ours from a housing standpoint. This is a vestry decision, and which will be informed by what you guys as a parish, tell them. So this is why it's really important to know what's going on, and for all of us to have an informed decision. So that's kind of what our purpose is, to give you all that information. So next slide is, I'm going to give it to JR, because he's going to talk about housing law, which is very exciting. I will say that. But it does affect what we're doing.
All right, yes, I get the very interesting part. If we can go on to the next slide. Okay, so there's a little bit of background here that I think is helpful for everyone to understand, to see why we're going to probably rely on a number of recently enacted pieces of state housing legislation. One is a recognition on the part of the legislature that not only are we in a housing crisis, but that there are certain places where it makes more sense to build that housing. We have other goals as a state, things like reducing our carbon footprint, things like ensuring that there's opportunity equally distributed across the state. And so they've focused a great deal on what is called infill development. Infill development is development that occurs inside of already urbanized places, cities, right? Not way out in the middle of nowhere. Some of the best opportunities for infill development are on sites that the landowner would generally consider underutilized. That could be, say, in a shopping mall, their parking lot, because maybe the parking lot has far too much. Or perhaps they are underutilizing the actual spaces that they have right now, and they can demolish part of their existing structure and replace it. So that's typically what's meant by that. As you probably all know, if you've looked at, say, just what the asking price is for a typical home in this area, land costs are an incredible impediment to building anything new, or to trying to make sure that housing in particular can be affordable. Very frequently, the building that is on the site is not worth a whole lot. The land is what is worth a lot. What we offer as a church is land, because we're already on it. Next one. That's basically what the state legislature is noting, that there's an awful lot of land that is available at both houses of worship and private educational institutions across the state. And for that purpose, they wanted to make sure that, given that these sites are usually subject to rather unusual zoning standards that are not consistent anywhere in the entire state, that they could create a process that would allow for the development of at least affordable housing on these sites. Enter Senate Bill 4. Next slide. All right, so what does it let you do? Well, it provides you with a ministerial application process for qualifying affordable housing developments. A ministerial application process is important in this context because it is a much more cost-effective and speedy process. You can go into the next slide. The key issue here is that it is something that is objective. It relies on only objective standards. It's a lot like if you were to go into the DMV and apply for a driver's license, the clerk who is there is going to look at your application, see if you've checked off all the boxes that they have to double check for you, and if you meet the criteria, then you get your license. If you don't, you don't. What is the clerk not doing? They're not engaging in any kind of subjective determination. They're not looking at you and saying, I don't like the color of your eyes, so you don't get your license, right? That sort of thing is what's typical, unfortunately, of a lot of housing development applications in the past. If you had to go through a lengthy process before a planning commission, a city council, and the city council decides, well, we don't like the color that you're going to paint this thing. You need to change it. Or we don't like how many units it has, or we don't like how tall it is, or we don't like all these sorts of things. That's not a permissible standard on which to judge the application. Instead, there's simply a series of criteria. You meet them, the application will be approved. Going to the next. I've covered a good portion of this. There are some other additional benefits, though, that I think are important here. One sits in the background, which is that historically, discretionary development applications are subject to the California Environmental Quality Act. It's a very lengthy process, sometimes duplicative. Any ministerial process, like the one in SB4, is exempt from CEQA. So we don't have to go through all of that, which is a huge expense that is saved and a huge amount of time that is reduced. Because CEQA is also the source of an awful lot of litigation, it's not subject to any of that litigation. So you'd have seriously reduced litigation risk. And then it has its own timelines to which an application approval is subject. So it is much faster in general than having to go through a traditional process. Next. So for us, as Jen noted, there's a whole bunch of things that are particularly important to us in the course of our listening to the parish community, what you want, what you don't want, what we want to see. Some of those things are clergy housing, and making sure that our tenants still have somewhere because we're very reliant on the income from them. SB4 contemplates those needs. So there is a proportion of this affordable housing complex that can be set aside for clergy. It doesn't have to look exactly the same. It can be completely different. And it also allows you to replace existing non-residential uses, so things like our classrooms and so forth. It's a lot more flexible than certain other options that we have. As you'll note from our last meeting, there is a portion of the campus that was rezoned for housing as part of the housing element. We're not confined to that one little portion of the campus. We can use kind of anywhere on the campus, so we have a lot more flexibility in that regard. So even if for some reason we weren't able to use SB4 for everything, or chose to use it for only portion of the development and something else for the rest, we have a lot of other options that also exist that are not just this one. However, in the course of our discernment of what makes sense for us to do, SB4 seems like the best vehicle for us to utilize. Next. So there have been a few questions. Well, what if we only want to build a rectory? Okay, we've got a couple of other options, but they all basically require building something else on site, and they're all a lot more costly to us. We would have to bear all of those costs. If we are working with an affordable housing developer using SB4, there's somebody else who is able to bear basically all of those costs for us. I think that's kind of important as a point to underscore. And I think that's the last one. Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to move into local projects. Robin kind of already said some of what I was going to say, but I will reiterate. So we have definitely heard a lot about, anything that we would be able to build on this campus would be a drop in the bucket. And it's important that we all kind of start to reframe our minds around the fact that you never fill a bucket unless you have a lot of drops. And there are a lot of drops. There are drops happening all the time, not only locally, but in the broader Bay Area community. This is something that we are not in alone. We are not the only ones that are doing this. But it is important for us to continue through, our missional work to really look at this and make sure, is this something that we can actually do on our campus? If you, need to go back to a Bible story, the Good Samaritan is a great one because, it was one person. It was one person, but the amount of good and the amount of change in their lives that was made by that one person was significant. It changed their entire life. They were left for the dead, and now they are alive. And I think that for those few people that we are able to support with this housing, it is going to make all of the difference in the world. And so, really trying to change kind of our mind frame on that, I think is going to be really important as we go forward. So we have a couple of ones to talk about that are in the area. So I will first hand it over to Festus, right?
Thank you. Hey, so like Sarah mentioned, this is the first project we're going to talk about. It's the Veranda. It's actually located in Cupertino on Stevens Creek. Can everyone hear me? We're good? Okay, got you. All right, so it's a 3-story building that consists entirely of studio apartments. There are 18 rentable units that are for seniors who are either extremely or very low income. But there's also one on-property unit that's reserved for a property manager. So Jen, if you get the next slide, please. So thanks to Jen, we have this beautiful map that will show you how to get there from where we are right now. So basically, just go on De Anza and then you'll be on Stevens Creek. It's located right across from Main Street, Cupertino. When you get there, it's about half an acre, and it consists of 19 total parking spots, with one of them being mobility accessible. The next slide, please. Cool. So a little bit of background on the project. So ground was broken in spring 2018, and the project was completed, and people moved in fall 2019. As far as funding, so a lot of it actually came from the city, actually a little under half of it. Some either directly from the city or through the Housing Trust Silicon Valley. In addition to that, Santa Clara also helped out a lot. There is a program called Measure A funds, where you're able to kind of reserve some of the housing in the building and use them for seniors who have disabling conditions, and that's like the last bullet on there. But also, this was the first project that was able to successfully do that in the county. There's also a project called HOME, which is a countywide consortium to give out federal funds for different affordable housing projects just like this. And last note on this slide, the developer was Charities Housing. If you get the next slide, please. Cool. So as I mentioned earlier, the entirety of the building is studio apartments, roughly 350 square feet, some a little bit bigger or smaller. Unfortunately, I was not able to get an actual floor plan from that building, but here's a sample floor plan from Sage Cupertino, which is just a little bit further down Stevens Creek. Yeah, and at the very top, you can actually see like a digital mock-up of the side of the veranda. And Jen, if you hit the next slide, you'll see it come to life because this project actually finished and people are living there now. So great thing about the housing team, we take a lot of field trips. So I was able to see what that looks like today. And Jen, if you hit one more slide. There's also a social area, which consists of like, grill, outdoor area. There's also a lounge for residents that I couldn't get into because I'm not a resident. And then here's kind of the parking area from the back. So that's all about the veranda, and I'm gonna pass it back to Sarah.
Okay. The reason that we want to talk about this one, yes, it's a gigantic building. No, we are not building that big of a building. The reason we wanted to talk about this is because it is a church property. So this is Emmanuel Lutheran on Lee Avenue and Moore Park. And it is done. So we really felt it was necessary to talk about a actual church one that is complete. They were able to complete the project. So it is 106 units. It is 100% permitted supportive housing, which means right out of homelessness. Now, as we go through the feasibility process, we are going to see what the market shows is needed. What is the demand study showing? However, we still have the ability to say what we would prefer as far as the tenants and who we are supporting. So I want to make that really clear that this project decided to go with straight out of homelessness, given this community, this neighborhood, a lot of other reasons, probably not going to be what we do. But I still wanted to make sure that we talked about it because, again, they did use the same process as far as the land lease that we would be looking into, and they were able to complete the project. So, next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. So, they started in 2017. They broke ground in 2021, and it was completed in 2023. So that kind of gives you an understanding of kind of the timeline that they went through. Next slide. This is where it is, if you are unfamiliar with kind of that Burbank area of San Jose. So it's right off of 280. It is a very small site. It's a really big building on a really small acreage. So our acreage is about twice this, what we would be looking at, but obviously much, much less density. It was their original church site, so it wasn't a blank plot of land when they built. It was actually their original sanctuary that they moved out of. I had no idea, but this church has actually been there since the 1800s. And they actually moved out of that sanctuary in the 60s. So it was kind of like our farmhouse. It was a place that they just used basically for offices and that sort of thing. So that's what was on the site before, and that's what they tore down and built the building. There is parking on the bottom level, so the bottom level is all parking, and it is a 99-year lease with Mid-Peninsula. Next slide. So these are the groups that helped to develop it. So Mid-Pen is both their developer and their management company. So they're actually doing the dual role there. Santa Clara County is the one that actually does the referrals for the housing. So they're the ones that take in the people that are able to move to this supportive housing, and they basically just take them in and go, okay, here you go, here's the housing. And then they have a New Directions, which is the counseling on site, and they provide counseling and supportive services for the residents. And then they got their funding mostly from the 2016 Measure A Affordable Housing Bond. So that's a lot of how they funded theirs. And I think that's the last slide, right? Yes, okay.
Okay, I'm going to talk briefly about Mary Avenue Villas, which is actually pretty close to us. They're two-story buildings that are located on Mary Avenue in Cupertino. They have not yet been built, so you're just going to see the concept drawings right now. There are 40 units plus a community room and an office. So again, a relatively small project. 100% affordable housing, and they're currently in pre-development. The affordable housing is for developmentally disabled adults and also a certain percentage of AMI, regular affordable housing. So you can see where it is. It's actually pretty close to us on the other side of De College. It's a very small site. Again, 0.79 acres, but it's sandwiched between the Sound Wall and Mary Avenue. So if you go down there and you see the dog park, you've gone too far. It's actually just a long, narrow sort of piece. So keep going. Next one. Okay, it's a partnership of a variety of people, the Rotary Club, the City of Cupertino, who provided the land, and right now they're in negotiations about whether or not they're going to do a ground lease or they're going to end up selling the land to them directly. So that has not been yet decided, mainly because the last City Council meeting had technical difficulties. So, so that's been put off until December 1st. Charities Housing is the developer on that. West Valley Community Services is providing affordable housing support, identifying some future residents, as well as housing choices. And they are working to provide free of charge intellectually and developmentally disabled services for people who are. So the housing is for individuals and families in the very or extremely low income categories, and 19 units are set aside for IDD tenants. On this one, it isn't just a bunch of studio apartments. There's a mix of apartments so that it can accommodate for families, perhaps a caregiver living with you, things like that. So there's a lot of options. They don't always have to be studio apartments. So you can see you got studio, 1 bed, and 2 bedroom apartments. And then there's also a community space and things like that that are needed. I'm going to have Judy, there you are, now talk briefly about a couple other Episcopal projects.
So it isn't just other churches that do this, but it has been done by a couple of Episcopal churches. And a while ago, a couple of us went to All Souls Church in Berkeley. They have had an office building that was there. It's actually quite large. It goes to the back as well. And it was office building and some housing for priests and associates. And so this one has 34 studio apartments for limited income seniors. It also has church office space and 2 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartments for church use. And they are in the density of Berkeley. And so this actually fits in well with their community. Christ Church in Los Altos built a 4-bedroom, 3-bath rectory 3 years ago. And you can't really see it, but it's quite a lovely modern house. And then Calvary Church in Santa Cruz built Cedar Street apartments, and they're actually kind of in the downtown area of Santa Cruz. And they have 65 units of affordable housing and supportive housing and 2,210 square feet of rental space. So theirs is partly income providing. If you see the church, they had a long, skinny, huge parking lot, and they filled it with this housing. And when you see the church, it looks like there's a church here, and then there's a big building behind them. So it doesn't look like part of the church, but it's enormous. And then the Episcopal Church in Almaden, which John Benz used to call the joint venture church because it's a congregational church and an Episcopal church that share property. They're in the process a little bit farther ahead than we are. And they're actually doing they're actually taking down their sanctuary, which is older, and they haven't really maintained it, and it's too big for them, and they're combining that into their affordable housing. But they're also working with HRNA. So there's a lot going on. Next.
So just a last couple of things. First of all, we'll continue to give you updates on everything that's happening. We're going to have a town hall at the end of the feasibility study, so that you're going to get all the information from that. And please, again, reach out if you have any comments or questions or anything. And then we're going to now have questions from everyone. Okay, does anyone have any questions for any one of us, or? Great.
I know you acknowledge the potential impact to the campus based upon whatever choices are made. And I'm wondering, within the scope of what's being considered, is how the character of the campus could change. I'm thinking particularly since these will be members of the public, however chosen, that will be here, that will be able to engage in legal activities as drinking, smoking, vaping, marijuana products, the people that come to visit them likewise, and how that could change the character of the campus, particularly. So I'm just wondering, and that's just one facet of how having a broad public community here could impact the character of the campus. I'm just wondering whether that has been in consideration.
That's absolutely true. Whenever you have a different population, they are selected in a different way than, I guess, we are self-selecting, right, for coming to St. Jude's. So certainly that's a consideration. And that's one of the things I think Sarah touched on a little bit, is that we will be able to have input into, who would be potentially living there. We would not be able to choose individual people. I want to make sure everybody knows that. But we would have some input into who it would be. But you're right, that is an issue. There's no doubt about it, is that, people are people, different, and how we all are, right, at our houses may be very different than how we are on campus. And these will be their homes. So that's something to think about. Oh, yes? Yeah, here. Yeah. Oh, no? Okay, sorry.
I think the other thing that's important to know is that unlike other developments, we are not asking for this development to be income producing for the church, and that gives us a little bit more flexibility in terms of working with the developer as to what the demographic of the people that might be in there, right? Otherwise, we'd be saying to the developer, we has to be income producing, and they're going to say, well, it has to be this group of people. Does that make sense? For sure. I mean, I think we're at early stage of yeah. Understood.
Oh, we can't, oh, I see, okay. Do you want to just repeat what you just said, Paul? Sorry. We only have one microphone, sorry. This is. Go ahead and just say.
Yes, I just wanted to bring up sort of the breadth of potentially unfortunate decisions that might have to be made based upon how things progress. And I'll just say potentially even the need to lock the sanctuary, which I think is unusual for the fact that it is open. And that I don't want to be a downer, but I just think, the breadth of consideration needs to be put out there.
Thank you, we really appreciate, that's a good point.
I would point out that now the sanctuary is open 24/7. We do have cameras to see if anybody comes. We've had Safe Park. We have all kinds of people that come at whatever hours for activities that people have here. So I think this is a non-issue.
Does anyone else have a question? Okay, sorry.
I was wondering if the tenants, have the normal tenants' rights, or, for, like eviction and things, or are there like covenants and restrictions that would apply to the, once they sign up, and move in? Are there any restrictions on what they can do, or how that works?
Well, I can tell you that any tenants that would be here would still, California law would still apply to them, whatever that is. But Jared's going to answer more of this.
Yeah, so if we're talking about affordable housing is a special species of housing, and there are certain pieces of state legislation that apply to it and certain other pieces that don't, because it's affordable housing. Whoever the selected operator for the site is, because we wouldn't be the ones directly, leasing to individual tenants, will deal with that particular issue. One of the things I'll note, for example, that doesn't apply to affordable housing are the annual rental increases that are moderated by AB 1482. So, for example, if area median incomes continue to rise faster than, say, inflation, then those rents could actually go up by more than what a tenant in market rate housing could be charged.
And just to reiterate, we as a parish will not be running this housing. Just so, I want to make sure everybody knows there's a management company. It's usually the developer. For example, Charities Housing will be running Mary Avenue Villas. Mid-Penn is running, Emmanuel Sobrato. Charities is running the Veranda. That is fairly typical. That someone else will be running it, and we are merely leasing. And then the expectation is we'll be leasing back our space to rent to our tenants.
Just one thing to note about Emmanuel Sobrato. First of all, the person I spoke to there was actually kind of the head of their housing team and is the deacon there. And he's going to be coming to talk to us more about kind of like the whole process. But he did mention that they actually meet with MidPenn on a quarterly basis. So it's not just like, oh, you're the developer and the management company and we don't have any say once it's actually up and running. They have quarterly meetings with them to talk about issues, to talk about things that have come up. So there's definitely still an ongoing communication there. It's just that we don't actually run it. But we actually have, the support of them and will have communication with them on a regular basis.
Who else is next? Okay, I'm gonna give it to Cal, and then I'll come back there.
All right, thank you so much, housing team, for all that you do. And I think this is a wonderful opportunity to serve our community. Some of the curiosities and continued concerns I'm hearing is that while we want to serve those who can benefit from housing given the current crisis in our community, there was a desire to keep St. Jude's a feeling of church in terms of the vibes, but also the visuals, the aesthetics. So we wonder that if there's property on the corner of De Anza, whether 1 or 2 stories, what on the corner says to the outer community this is a church? Not to say we have an orchard that speaks of the church, but we wanted to know, like, what type of visuals will there be so that it doesn't look like a residential property? Oh, by the way, there's a church in the back that people may not know for our publicity.
Thank you, Cal. That's something actually that we had identified, months and months and months ago. We actually currently have kind of a problem with that. I don't know if you guys know that. It's very difficult to tell we're a church. People are like, oh, are you that church next door? No. And in fact, Donna can attest to the fact that we don't get our packages always. It takes a while sometimes for them to find us. So this is an issue. And in fact, this gives us an opportunity to actually make it way more obvious that we are a church. I know that it sounds like, well, that doesn't make sense. You've got housing, but we have opportunities for better signage. We have better opportunities for the space that's currently, between the street and the sidewalk. We have other options to make this actually part of the project. And in fact, that's one of the items that's in the feasibility study, to say we need more visibility. So hopefully that's going to be something that's improved if we do decide to go ahead and do this. Thanks. Way back there.
So you're going to run back and forth. So BRB. Start with
This is actually very similar to a couple of questions that have been raised already, so I don't necessarily expect you to answer it again. But I have a little bit of a different spin on the question that I wanted to give, and that is thinking not so much about the impact of our tenants on the church, but the other way around, right? So I think we can all put ourselves in the shoes of those tenants and think about their sort of understandable demands and expectations about the place where they live, and the things that we do that may impact that. Like, we have all these cars that park here on Sunday morning when we're doing this church thing, or we've got kids running around making a lot of noise Monday through Friday because of the after-school programs that are here, or maybe some other issue that we haven't thought about. I'm wondering about how needing to live, in a peaceful way with our neighbors might affect things that we do here. And so, I think Paul, gave an example. Maybe that means we change some of the things we do. Maybe we start locking the sanctuary, maybe some other things. But maybe it has more substantive changes in what we do in terms of our programs here. And, again, I don't expect that you can really predict that any better than I can, but maybe something to include in your investigation going forward here about feasibility. What impact do we have on the people who live here, and therefore how does that impact us in terms of responding to that?
So will there be like a clear separation of the, sorry. So will there be a clear separation of space, between the housing project and us, so that we can set rules for when people step onto our property, that, you can't vape, or you can't, whatever your rules are, is there a clear separation? I guess that's my question. Oh, did I not hold it up? Yeah, sorry.
So I can tell you today, we have an open campus, just so everybody knows. People, and you probably saw during services, people will wander through our parking lot. They will walk through and come to our, our, gosh, I've lost the word. Labyrinth, thank you. I lose a lot of words now. Come to our labyrinth. We have a completely open campus. It would be nigh unto impossible, probably, to say, well, you live here, so you can't just wander onto the campus. Oh, okay. Okay. Well, the building will be separate, but the way it is right now, likely the tenant spaces will be adjoined somehow, because it's going to be part of, in fact, paid for by the affordable housing. Like, we're not going to be paying for that.
I don't think my question came across.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, it's that when they're on, because, other people wandering in, there's nothing we can say to them because, whatever they want to do, we can't do anything about it. But if community is right here, of course, we want to welcome them to our space. That's the whole idea, right? Part of it is to draw people in. But on the other hand, hold it to my mouth? Oh, okay, all right. Sorry, okay. So when people wander in, which we want them to do, right? We want to welcome them to church. But, will there be clear rules that when they're on this campus, this part of the property, that, there's some expectations of behavior like not taking drugs and things like that? We can't do that to people walking in from outside, but you have people living here. That's different, you see. Yeah, so because there was a concern just now that was brought up, and I was thinking, is there a way to address this? Because I'm concerned because there are little kids running around and they can get influenced, I mean, my son went to school and there are people coming on the property to get them to take drugs. I mean,
So we actually can, right now. We could put up signage that says no smoking. We could put up signage that says no drugs, and that might be something that we end up doing. But again, I mean, that's the type of thing that we would have help from the management company to enforce. But to say that it's different if they're living on campus to not living on campus isn't true. If we have rules about our campus, we could put up signs right now that say that. We just have never felt the need to. But we own it. We will still own the land. It is our campus. So yeah.
I guess I would just say, I think we have to be careful. I feel like a couple of questions are assuming that we have a group of ne'er-do-wells that are going to now be occupying this housing here. And I think that that's I personally don't think it's realistic, but I think that let's perhaps assume positive intent, assume positively that we will have a group of people who are occupying housing like many of these other developments that are stable, earnest people just trying to make their way in this area. So
One thing to add, I know we've talked about like personal stories before, but until about probably 3 years ago, we would have qualified for affordable housing. So, yeah.
So affordable housing is based on income. So how do you prevent life tenants?
So again, that is based on the management company to decide. I mean, yeah, you could have someone that continues to pay their rent and continues to be eligible, and they stay here for the foreseeable future. But that's something that the management company would deal with.
There are also there are income limits, right? They're AMI, and those are reviewed for the tenants. Meaning, if you meet the AMI criteria this year, if you don't meet it in 5 years, it doesn't mean that you still continue qualifying.
So one of the things I think we need to address here is what the income qualifications look like for one person right now in Santa Clara County. Low income is up to $111,000 a year, because that is where area median incomes sit. So we're not talking, you know, exactly. So I just want to keep that in mind for everyone. There's a reason why at the beginning of these forums, usually we show you the AMI tables and also what typical rents are in the area, because they are extraordinarily high. And for a great many of us who own or have owned for a long time, this isn't the milieu that you're encountering every day. But for the vast majority of folks who are moving to the area, this is, and it's tough. And I don't know, I mean, I think $111,000 a year is an awful lot of money for one person. But this is all based on income. It's based on income and on the number of people in the household. So like for 4 people, a low income would be $160,000 a year.
So I think Kathy was next. And then we'll go over.
So as Kathy, I'd just like to say that I know a lot of people, a lot of my friends, and we like to make a lot of noise in our backyard and drink and have fun. And, you know, and that's my house, and I should be able to do that. I'm my rental house, but I should be able to do that. Having said that, I have also lived next to people who smoke like chimneys, and it was miserable for us. So I can see, you know, good people can cause problems being neighbors regardless, right? So, and then the question from Charlotte was, if there is an issue, will we have a specific person who's a liaison with the people who are managing the building? So if we say, you know, I don't know, these people are, I don't know what they're doing. They stand right outside the sanctuary door and smoke all day long. I don't know, right? Is there someone who's going to have that specific job, I guess?
I can answer that, and that's 100% yes. Absolutely. And in fact, one of the things I found from talking with a bunch of these developers and the different people who have done projects with them is that, as Sarah mentioned, it isn't just a, okay, we built it and go away. It's not like that at all. And in fact, they're very approachable and talk to you and work with you about any kind of issues that you're having. The other thing that's also, they live and die some ways on their reputation. That's another thing to consider, is that who would be the developer if they've burned their bridges elsewhere? No one wants to work with them. And of course, it's your land. I mean, there's a lot of reasons that they would not want to do this. And you know, it's in their best interest to maintain that relationship. Dennis next, then you guys.
I, in fact, kind of agree with some of the questions raised earlier. And those are valid concerns, and I'm, you know, basically agree with them. The thing is, when they raise those questions, I'd like the committee to take it to heart and address it. That's what the feasibility study is all about. Address those issues. I don't think we should assume those problems are not going to happen. It is going to happen sometimes, and by the time it happens, what are you going to do about it? So those are the things that we have to consider, and not, I think we should not play down those questions and think this is not a concern. So to me, for the good of, you know, St. Jude's, we should think over that. Even there are some legal issues, even though somebody's going to manage it. What happens if the management company default? What are we going to do? The land is ours. We cannot run away from the legal, you know, obligation.
I definitely appreciate that. That last point about the management company is something we explicitly have heard before and have brought up with the REDC, and we're going to address that in the feasibility study. And this is being recorded, so we're going to take all that feedback and we'll address it, we'll consider it. So thank you.
I know it's a very good cause to have this type of project. But to me, 90 years is a long time, it's a lifetime commitment. And yet, the church land is our only asset. We don't have any other asset. How are we going to address it? If 90 years from now we have all these problems, how are we going to face our future parishioners? We have to answer to our own conscience.
Thank
Hey, I just wanted to respond to what Jeffrey said about assuming that this is a group of ne'er-do-wells, a word I don't use a lot. That's right. I just want to point out, at least the concern I was raising is exactly the opposite, which is, I mean, as Jared just told us about the income limits and so forth, we're talking about respectable middle-class people just like us, right? That's precisely the problem, because they will have the same kind of concerns we would have about our own neighborhoods. And that's where I think we have the issue of coexisting right next to each other, right? It strikes me that this would be a whole lot easier if we were a dying church with a lot of space and very few parishioners. Then it's a no-brainer, right? I don't think that description fits us right now, and so it's a concern to me whether that's really possible to do side by side with really very different interests in how the space is used, what the environment is. And so shouldn't be thinking about it. We can have a screening process to make sure only the right people get in. That's not going to solve the problem. Right? It's all about how do you coexist with people who very understandably have the same concerns you do in your own neighborhood.
We're heading into 1 o'clock right now, so we're finishing up. So is there anyone who hasn't yet spoken that, Cheryl? Oh.
Announcements. A member of the Korean church came in to say that there's a brown Chevy on the other side of the building that's just running. No one's there. So if it's your brown Chevy, go turn it off.
Gerald?
Thank you very much. For me, I'll call myself an observer of what is happening. For one, I'm very thankful to the management of this group of housing, bringing this issue to us, to challenge, to give constructive criticism, to come up with whatever we are saying. So, for one, that's a very good thing. But on the bigger picture, the church is doing its work. Instead of us going to look for people outside, we are bringing people near us. If you want to have a house near here, people will come there. Then evangelism is easy. Automatically, there will be some people who will be saying, I'm going to the nearest church. So for one, you have done your work as the church of evangelism. Those people will be coming here, regardless of what or what. I quite agree there will be some challenges, but even in a home, there are challenges. You can't run away from challenges. They will come, but we shall face them the way they come. But what we are doing as a church, building a house for our people, I think it's a very, very good cause. On problems that will come, I think the Reverend and other people, we can have another committee to be fighting over these challenges that will be coming. But construction, for me, I feel we should go ahead and encourage you 100%. You are very much on the right track.
Thank you. And I do want to assure everyone that, regardless of if you have concerns, if we are listening. And we have absolutely, we discuss this stuff at our meetings. We write down everything that everyone said. We rewatch the forum to make sure that we listen carefully to what everyone has said. Your voice is definitely heard and important in all of this. So, again, I want to read it. We haven't made a decision. So all this input is really, really important to us. and it's certainly going to be baked into what happens next. So, again, if you think of anything after the forum, we are all here. That's usually the way my brain works. I'll be like, oh, I should have asked that question. Please reach out to any of us, and we're happy to. Or we can even schedule a one-on-one meeting with you if you find that would be helpful to you. We're happy to do that as well. Thank you.
An update on my previous announcement. Steve just said it's a Subaru with a St. Jude's bulletin in the front seat. In the back seat.
Maybe the fire side. Maybe there's something. Okay, thank you. Have a wonderful Sunday, and thank you.